The following program presents principles designed to promote good health and is not intended to take the place of personalized professional care. The opinions and ideas expressed are those of the speaker. Viewers are encouraged to draw their own conclusions about the information presented.
Hello and welcome to Health for a Lifetime. We're glad that you joined us today. And today we're going to be talking about a very large subject. Actually, we're going to be talking about obesity. And we're going to be talking about overweight. And this is, of course, a problem that is just escalating here in America and also around the world. And talking with us about this problem is going to be Dr. Timothy Lawton. He's a physician from Wichita, Kansas. And he approaches the common killers of America from a lifestyle approach, a medical approach, but also a lifestyle approach. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks, Don.
Now, you run a clinic called Vitae Lifestyle Medicine Center, which really looks at these very types of things like obesity from a lifestyle approach.
Right. Traditionally, lifestyle has really been the foundation of the approach to maintaining and achieving a healthy weight. Recently, there's been a lot of interest in drugs for obesity, but it really comes down to lifestyle choices. And part of what we're trying to do, there's the anti-obesity industry is a $30 or $40 billion a year industry, and there's so many conflicting pieces of information out there. Should I eat low fat? Should I eat low carb? Should I eat low sugar, low cal? What should I do? Or high protein, you're right. So we try and bring things back to a science-based approach and really help people with their individualized needs.
And there in Wichita, you work with, in Kansas, you work with the schools and corporations and churches and individuals.
Absolutely.
To work with those things. Where are we in America and in Western countries? Probably the statistics we'll share will be American, but where are we in terms of the problem with obesity?
Well, let's look back, first of all, to 1980. At that point, 15% of adults were obese. By 1994, that had increased to 23%. By 2002, that was up to 31%. Now, they estimate that 1/3 of adults are obese, another 1/3 of adults are overweight. That only leaves 1/3 of people at a healthy weight.
What's causing this? I mean, it's kind of obvious. What goes in doesn't always come out as soon, but what's causing this?
There's a lot of factors that are primarily lifestyle related. The primary factors are the decrease in physical activity that we've had. As more and more jobs have been done by machines, our lives are easier, we have less physical demands in our day. Even children, childhood obesity is becoming a big problem. Do you know that children, as compared to those in the 1970s, ride their bikes and walk 40% less than they did just a generation ago?
40% less.
40% less. Not to mention the changes in some of our eating patterns.
This is what, video games and other things that keep kids inside? They just don't get out.
All the electronic screens. They used to just have one category called television watching, but now there's television, computer, video games. They just call them electronic screens.
Well, what are the health detriments to being obese?
It's not just a cosmetic issue. You know, most people who think about their weight, they're concerned, well, I want to look better. Maybe I want to feel better. But if you look at the numbers, obesity is the number 2 cause of death in the United States. There's number 1 cause is still tobacco, with 435,000 deaths per year. But number 2 is obesity, just an inch behind, with over 400,000 deaths.
Is that
per
right?
year.
So you usually hear that cardiovascular disease is number 1.
Right. Well, we have a list of some of the different diseases
Okay.
that are related to obesity.
All right.
The first one is diabetes. In fact, being obese versus being of a healthy weight increases your risk for diabetes about tenfold.
Wow.
That explains in great part the diabetes epidemic. Other risks, such as other things that are higher in people who are obese, include high blood pressure, heart disease, certain forms of cancer, like breast and endometrial cancer, cholesterol, high cholesterol, and just a disorder of all the different kinds of cholesterols or lipids, gallbladder disease, arthritis, and that's just the beginning of the list, Don. We could go on.
So it really is a heavy cost, no pun intended.
Well, people who are obese are a heavier cost. Typically, may spend, or on average, may spend twice as much as far as healthcare dollars as someone who's of a healthy weight.
So give me then a medical definition. I mean, someone's going to say, well, I'm overweight, but you're not, and it can be kind of subjective. Is there a definition we could use?
Well, the medical definition is based on body mass index. And this is a standardized comparison of height and weight. The way body mass index is calculated, you can do this at home if you take out a pencil and paper, you write down your weight, multiply it by 703, divide that by your height in inches, divide it by your height in inches again. So
my weight is 185.
Let's do an example.
100 pounds.
Let's say we have a person who weighs 180 pounds,
okay,
and they're 5 feet 5 inches tall. That's 65 inches. Well, you take 180 times 703, divide by 65, divide by 65 again. Their BMI is 30. And as we see from the information over here, beginning at 30 is the classification of obese. Overweight is between 25 and 30, and healthy weight is under 25.
So you can just do that calculation right now at home, and you can find out whether or not...
Find out exactly where you are.
Where you are in this.
If you know your height and weight.
Okay. So we're undernourished but overfed.
Certainly the number of calories and the sizes of our portions have increased over the last 20 years or so. But we have a graphic of the upside-down food guide pyramid. This is how Americans are typically eating in the United States. At the top of the pyramid is 51% of our calories are coming from refined foods and oil are the added fats. 42% of our calories are from dairy products and animal foods. It only leaves 7% of our food calories coming from whole foods and plant-based foods. Really, that's not a healthy way to sustain a body.
So that's the upside-down pyramid. We usually have the healthy one going the other way. Talk to me about the density of foods, calorie density.
Calorie density is how I've structured the right-side-up food pyramid.
Okay.
In this pyramid, we see that the top of the pyramid are what we call the discretionary calories. The bottom, let's start with the bottom, actually. The foundation of our diet really should be the whole plant-based foods. Whole foods meaning the whole grain as opposed to a refined white flour. And then foods mostly as they were grown. It's certainly better to eat the apple than the apple juice or the apple pie. So mostly whole plant-based foods, which would include vegetables, fruits, legumes, which are beans, whole grains, nuts, and seeds. The smaller part of the pyramid are what we call discretionary calories. And these would be the animal products, dairy, meats, cheeses, and then other kinds of refined foods, the white flour, the white rice, and then the oils, which are added fats.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so we want to be pyramid number 2.
Pyramid number 2. And we were part of that pyramid. If you think about what's going into that pyramid, and we think about what's going into obesity, we have this concept of calorie density. And those foods that are the whole plant-based foods are going to be lower in calorie density, much lower in calorie density than the foods at the top of the pyramid. So let's just take a couple of examples. If I were to take if I had a pound of lettuce in front of me, that would have approximately 100 calories.
That's not very
And
much.
imagine, I mean, can you imagine if you ate a pound of lettuce or green leafy vegetables, you'd really fill yourself up. If we look at other things like fruits or vegetables, about 250 to 350 calories per pound. So imagine you've got a whole pound of vegetables sitting in front of you. You can eat that, and I guarantee your stomach would be as full as you can you can make it. On the other hand, Don, let's say that I have a pound of steak in front of me. Well, that's not going to be 200 or 300 calories. That's going to be 2,000 calories. It's going to, sit in my stomach about the same volume as those vegetables, but it's going to pack a lot more calorie density in.
So it's like potatoes versus potato chips, carrots versus all those different kind of equations.
When you look at a bag of potato chips, for example, more than half of the calories are coming from fat. It's the added oil. And oil, by the way, is 4,000 calories per pound.
4,000. That's a little fat.
We don't sit and eat a pound of oil, but we do add a lot of fats to our food. Chips and fries and butter and different things.
So then basically back to foods as they occur in nature. Foods is grown. That's what we want to have the most of.
You're right. You're right.
Okay, so we've talked about a couple things. What's the next thing we need to consider if we're going to attack obesity?
The next most important thing is balancing calories in with calories out. We kind of think of this as like a scale. You need to have, we have a little graphic of this that shows you need to balance the intake with the output. And really making a commitment to being physically active is how you can burn off more calories than you take in. There's a classic medical equation that says 3,500 calories equals 1 pound, whether you're gaining it or losing it.
I see.
So, Don, let's just take an example. Let's say I want to consume 2 extra cans of regular pop a day. Now, that might be not unreasonable. Maybe a lot of people do that, 2 or 3 extra cans. Well, that's an extra 500 calories a day. If I do that every day for 7 days, that's 3,500 calories. I'm going to be averaging, putting on about a pound a week by adding all those extra calories in. By the same token, if I was someone who could subtract 500 calories a day or exercise so that I burn off 500 more calories a day, then I could lose a pound a week.
So how many, maybe this is a question that you might not know the equation to, but if you could figure out exactly how many calories you burn per half hour of exercise, then you kind of would know. That's going to cost me 2 hours of walking if I ate that.
Well, someone figured this out. For every M&M they eat, they had to walk 2 times around the track at the gym.
Is that right?
So they thought twice about the bag of M&Ms, thinking how many laps they'd have to walk.
We're talking with Dr. Timothy Lawton. We're talking about obesity. It's a problem that is plaguing America and other places as they adopt the American lifestyle. It causes huge problems, diabetes, hypertension, all kinds of problems, and it's really affecting children. We're going to be talking more about what we can do to address this problem and avoid these killer diseases when we come back.
Have you found yourself wishing that you could shed a few pounds? Have you been on a diet for most of your life, but not found anything that will really keep the weight off? If you've answered yes to any of these questions, then we have a solution for you that works. Dr. Hans Deal and Dr. Eileen Lettington have written a marvelous booklet called Reversing Obesity Naturally, and we'd like to send it to you free of charge. Here's a medically sound approach successfully used by thousands who were able to eat more and lose weight permanently without feeling guilty or hungry through lifestyle medicine. Dr. Deal and Dr. Lettington have been featured on 3ABN, and in this booklet, they present a sensible approach to eating, nutrition, and lifestyle changes that can help you prevent heart disease, diabetes, and even cancer. Call or write today for your free copy of Reversing Obesity Naturally, and you could be on your way to a healthier, happier you. It's absolutely free of charge, so call or write today.
Welcome back. We're glad you've joined us again for Health for a Lifetime. We're talking about obesity. We're talking about the problems it can cause, but also how to solve these problems with just some tips from Dr. Timothy Lawton. He's a physician from Wichita, Kansas. He runs a clinic there that's called Vitae Lifestyle Medicine. It looks both at medicine and lifestyle. You get the best of both worlds, but really, he's told us that the most effective means of dealing with obesity is lifestyle. Thanks for joining us, Dr. Lawton.
Thanks, Don.
And we've been looking at different things we can do. Avoid those calorie-dense foods. Flip the pyramid to have more of the foods as grown, really.
Right.
And then we've looked, what else have we looked at?
Well, we talked about burning off more calories than you take in.
Right.
Becoming more physically active. And there's some numbers on that particular aspect. It seems that if people exercise about 30 minutes a day, that's enough to maintain their weight so they don't gain any more. But it really takes at least 60 minutes a day to turn the equation around to start losing the weight.
So if you want to lose the weight, get out there and walk 30 more minutes. Not just lunchtime, but also maybe skip the supper and walk then.
Yeah, or start it, I think if you've got something that you want to make a priority in your life, you've got to make it first thing in your day. So if you want to get the exercise in, do it first thing. If you want to have some other priority, do that first. That way you can get it off your checklist and move on.
One of the other things you've mentioned is portion sizes. What about them?
Well, we have a lot of increasing portion sizes over the last couple years.
Supersize me, right?
Exactly. I mean, I think we all know things have gotten larger and larger. These are some of the suggestions that I've used with my patients successfully. Measuring out the portions. When you get a bag of nuts, for example, get yourself a 1/4 cup measuring scoop and really say, I'm just going to eat this amount and I know how much I'm getting. I recommend using smaller plates and smaller cups. We don't need the 22-inch dinner plates. Avoiding unconscious eating. That's when you sit in front of the TV with a bag of chips, you don't have any clue what you've eaten until it's gone. And then the fourth concept is splitting meals. You need a strategy for eating out as well as eating at home, but the portion sizes have gotten just immense, often at restaurants. They're trying to outdo each other, I think, with the biggest portions. So one tip that I think works real well, you either split the entree or you just ask for your doggy box, your take-home box up at the beginning of the meal and split your portion at the beginning. And you've got something for another meal.
So avoid those all-you-can-eat places.
Well, you'll pay for it, yeah.
Yeah. Okay, what else? What next do we need to do? What's another tip you give your patients?
Well, one of my first experiences with working with the weight came with a patient. She couldn't understand how she weighed as much as she did. And I said, well, tell me what you eat. She said, well, I skip breakfast, which...
Bad sign.
Bad place to start. But second thing she says is, I just have a small sandwich for lunch and a small salad for dinner. There's no way you can keep gaining weight on that. Tell me what you drink. And so she confessed, Doc, I like Dr. Pepper. I'm not picking on Dr. Pepper, but that's what she drank. I like it a lot. And she said she drinks about 6 liters a day.
6 liters a day.
So we did the math, and that's about 2,400 calories. And my goodness, we said, I know what you can do to lose some weight. And so she lost about 60 pounds very quickly just by not drinking her calories. The body doesn't register fullness in the same way. Even if you would drink, say juice, as opposed to eating the orange or eating the apple, your body does not register fullness. Those calories go right on into you and get stored more readily, as opposed to something we have to chew on and take some time to digest. So it's not just pop; it would be juice and any other liquid calories.
Well, you mentioned Dr. Pepper, and I think it also has caffeine in it, which makes you want to come back to it more and more. So it's kind of hard sometimes for people to give those up. They get a headache. They get all kinds of... Did she experience headaches?
Well, it's I don't recall if she had headaches or not. She was so happy to be losing the weight, she didn't complain. But You know, Americans on average use some kind of stimulant every 2 hours during the day.
Is that right?
Stimulants can be things like caffeine or nicotine or sugar. And some people would also classify red meat and salt as stimulants too. These are things that kind of get our adrenaline pumping, get us going. But there's a price to pay. When you start trying to get energy out of someone that doesn't have that energy, you'll pay for it later on.
Now, you mentioned breakfast. You said that when this person had avoided breakfast and then went to, a small lunch and then something. I've heard that breakfast is important in weight control. Is that right?
Don, it's important to eat breakfast, but it's also important what type of breakfast you eat. We talked a little bit in the past about low glycemic versus high glycemic foods. There have been a couple studies now that have looked at the type of breakfast that someone eats. And if it's a high glycemic breakfast, meaning something like a can of pop or a bowl of Fruit Loops, raises your blood sugar fast, blood sugar drops fast. People who eat a low glycemic breakfast, like a bowl of porridge or slow-cooked oatmeal, tends to stabilize their blood sugar. Well, at the end of the day, the type of breakfast you eat determines how many calories you eat overall in that day. 50 to 80% more calories in people who eat a high glycemic breakfast. And you say, well, how about skipping breakfast? The problem with skipping breakfast is people often get so hungry they just have to grab the quickest thing they can to keep their energy level going.
Someone told me once that chewing your food more also can help you lose
Slow
weight.
down, yeah. Slow down. Takes
What
you
about-
digest better too.
What about additional fats?
Well, you take the example of calorie density again. A pound of potatoes has a lot less calories than, say, a pound of potato chips. It's because of the added fats, which carry a lot more calorie density.
So you want to limit those.
Yep. And then we also want to limit added sugars, and we want to limit artificial sweeteners. Some folks think that the artificial sweeteners are going to be their saving grace, but in reality, the artificial sweeteners stimulate a craving for more sweets and for more artificial sweeteners. So they don't really help you lose weight. My best advice is to have people retrain their sweet tooth.
Retrain it.
So they learn to enjoy foods for their natural flavors.
Now, when you say retrain it, have they ever done studies on how long it takes you to retrain your taste buds?
2 or 3 weeks should do it.
Okay. Any strategies for when I go to the grocery store?
I really think that health begins at the grocery store, but it begins with planning even before you go to the grocery store. You need to make out a list. You need to have a well thought out strategy for what kinds of things you're going to make and buy. And we have issues of temptation with foods all the time. If you don't bring that temptation into your home, if you don't bring the sweets or the highly refined foods into your home, it makes it that much harder for you to obtain them. But you need to have like an apple or carrot sticks or something available that you can eat if you are hungry.
If you feel like you must eat at night, I mean, you don't have to do anything. I understand that. But what would be the best thing to eat or avoid if you felt like you had to have something?
That's a good question. I think a lot of the reason that we eat at night is because we're pushing ourselves too hard. If we are feeling tired at 9 o'clock, maybe it's our body's signal that our body needs some rest. But instead, what we typically do is get some more food so we can keep going. And so, first of all, assess your need for rest and sleep. Make sure you're getting adequate rest. And then if you need some more food, it's got to be one of the whole plant-based foods, as
Light.
opposed, well, the vegetables, the fruits, the grains.
Not calorie dense.
And even though nuts are calorie dense, I'd much rather have someone eat some nuts than, say, a bag of chips or a bowl of ice cream.
Stress?
The stress plays a huge role in the maintenance of weight. We've talked so far about getting more exercise and reducing calories. I had a conversation with a doctor recently who said she had prescribed the exercise and the weight loss, and the patient still was not losing weight. Well, this patient was waking up at 4:30 every morning to exercise. She was only getting about 4 hours of sleep. And so by depriving her body of sleep, she was increasing stress hormones in her body. And stress hormones like cortisol tell our body to hold on to the calories, not to lose them.
Okay.
So this doctor took out another prescription and wrote, stay in bed until 6 a.m. Don't get up at 4:30 to exercise. And by doing so, this patient was then able to reduce her stress, get the adequate rest, and start to lose the weight that she was wanting to lose.
Does it help to just, this lady sounds like she was just really focusing in on her weight problem and forgetting other aspects. Is that a principle?
One of the biggest things, people, especially around the holidays and the start of the new year, get excited and enthusiastic. I'm going to do something different. I'm going to really go full steam ahead and make big changes. And then they often kind of burn out and after a month or so. What we're really looking at is not simply the concept of losing weight, but the whole issue of improving health in general. People often get discouraged. I exercised and restricted my diet, but I didn't lose the weight. Oftentimes, they are not losing pounds on the scale, but they're improving their body composition. They're improving their muscle mass, their strength, their flexibility, their energy level, which are all important things as part of improving one's health overall.
So these are the tips you share then at Vitae, and you find that people that follow these have a turnaround.
People often do, and I think they're often encouraged knowing that they're improving the health of their body as well as losing their weight.
What do you do when someone comes in and says, well, I'm just big boned?
Don, we've got all kinds of excuses. People say it just runs in my family, or they've tried everything, and I think they just need a little bit more encouragement and some really solid advice.
And you give them when they come to your center, do you give them like a list of these different things? Is that what you do?
We try and individualize it. We give them specific
look at what
menu ideas and calorie recommendations.
We've been talking with Dr. Timothy Lawton. He's a physician from Wichita, Kansas, and he runs a center there, Vitae Lifestyle Medical Center, that looks at problems like obesity. Thanks so much for joining us today and sharing that with us.
Thank you, Don.
And thank you also for being with us today. We hope that today's program helps you get a handle on obesity, not maybe for yourself or those that you know, and as a result, you avoid these killer diseases. Thanks for joining us.